Venom comes out in just a few days, but this isn't the first time they tried giving him his own movie.
We are Venom.
Since his appearance in Spider-Man comics in the mid-80s, Venom has been one of the most popular anti-heroes in Marvel's lineup of characters. Fans have wanted to see a faithful portrayal of the character in a live-action film for as long as they wanted to see Spider-Man in a movie. 2018's Venom may just fulfill the urge to see the villain on screen, but just like his nemesis of Peter Parker, he too has a complicated history in the medium of film. Here's a complete rundown of Venom's history in movies, from Spider-Man 3 to 2018's Venom. The two Spider-Man films directed by Sam Raimi were both successes with fans and critics, in addition to doing great at the box office. Production on a third film was greenlit as Spider-Man 2's release was just a few months away in 2004. Raimi, a big fan of the web-slinger since childhood, was interested in exploring Peter's perceptions of criminals and concluding the arc with Harry Osborn as teased at the end of the second film. Raimi wanted to add another villain to the film's story, right in the middle of retroactively reworking the villain of Sandman into the first film as the killer of Uncle Ben. Raimi originally wanted to adapt the Vulture to film, but producer Avi Arad suggested the third film should have a villain that fans have wanted to see, instead of ones that Raimi had a specific fondness for. After being scrutinized by Raimi as having a lack of humanity, the director decided to add the character of Venom in the film to please fans and even began to grow fond of the character himself. Eddie Brock was going to be in the film regardless, but not as Venom, at least at first. Eddie Brock would be present in some capacity, but the filmmakers thought issues of paparazzi and tabloid journalism could be explored with the character. Venom was just one of many character and narrative additions that made the screenwriters unsure if they could realistically fit these concepts in one singular movie. The idea of splitting the film into two movies was brought up, but never materialized.
Where do all these guys come from?
From the start, Venom was crafted to essentially be an evil doppelganger to Spider-Man. His costume would keep the webbing pattern from Spider-Man's costume, but to highlight its motif of being latched onto a human host. The design of the symbiote organism itself was made to look absolutely alien and abstract, not similar to a spider, octopus, or different animal. Special effects animators took inspirations from tigers and lions to realize how the character would move and attack. He would also be given a musical theme to articulate his demonic presence. The character of Eddie Brock would be played by actor Topher Grace, who was then known for his role on the 2000s television sitcom, That 70s Show.
Oh my god, that's Gwen.
Who are you?
It's Brock, sir. Edward Brock Jr. I work at the Daily Bugle. And I'm dating your daughter.
While Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson are having a date in Central Park of New York, a meteorite lands just near them. A black substance begins to crawl out of the stone and makes its way onto Peter's scooter. The organism latches itself onto the vehicle, where Peter and Mary Jane leave. Eddie Brock would be the photographer that captures Spider-Man's rescue of Gwen Stacy. Peter, as Spider-Man, learns about Eddie's intentions to take Peter's spot at the Daily Bugle at this point in the film.
Yeah, look, just between you and me, guy's kind of an amateur.
Later in the film, the symbiote crawls around Peter's body while he is sleeping in his red and blue costume. Hours after he had learned the identity of Flint Marko, aka the Sandman, as the real killer of Uncle Ben. Peter is quick to notice its improved physical properties and takes it to Dr. Kurt Connors as Peter Parker. The physics professor cautions Peter to not let the organism touch his body, labeling it as a symbiote. With nightmares of the night Uncle Ben died fresh in his mind, Peter hears of a bank robbery on his police scanner, suspecting it to be Marko, whom he fought just days earlier as the Sandman. When Spider-Man is pursuing Sandman while wearing the black suit, Eddie spots Spider-Man and mentions his new outfit. Spider-Man promptly destroys Eddie's camera and continues to chase after Sandman.
See you, chump.
Eddie berates Spider-Man as he leaves, but not without snapping some pictures on a spare camera he had tucked away. Peter seemingly kills Sandman and continues to wear the costume, it slowly changing his personality and actions towards the people in his life as Peter Parker. During this time, Brock writes an article framing Spider-Man as the one that robbed the bank, not Sandman. Peter confronts Eddie at the Bugle after seeing the published story on the cover of the newspaper. After just being promoted as a staff photographer, Peter brings physical proof that the photo and several elements of the story are fake. Brock is immediately fired from the Daily Bugle and his career is ultimately tarnished. Peter and Connors continue to collaborate on studying the symbiote. Connors speaks to Peter of its extraterrestrial origin and its dangerous ability to increase aggression in its host. but Peter is largely uninterested. Brock later enters a church and pleads to God to smite Peter Parker. Peter, in the area feeling ashamed at his actions towards Mary Jane earlier, tries to remove the suit. Peter learns that the symbiote is affected negatively by extreme sound. Peter manages to get rid of the symbiote, but it soon finds another host in Brock. Knowing Peter and Spider-Man are the same person, he seeks to get revenge on Spider-Man, enlisting the help of Sandman and kidnapping Mary Jane. Venom and Sandman take Mary Jane to a construction site and publicly challenge Spider-Man to save her. Spider-Man arrives, but is quickly outmatched by Sandman and Venom, Venom revealing himself to be Brock trying to humiliate Peter Parker and defeat Spider-Man.
I'm thinking humiliation. Kind of like how you humiliated me.
Harry Osborn, who has during the course of the film became the new Green Goblin, manipulated Peter and Mary Jane and had his face scarred during an encounter with Peter wearing the black suit, comes to the Wallcrawler's aid. Peter is reminded of the symbiote's weakness against sound during the fight and disrupts the creature's bond to Eddie just enough for him to free Eddie from its grasp. Spider-Man uses one of Harry's bombs, whom Venom had fatally wounded just moments ago, to destroy the symbiote. Eddie tries to rebond with the alien, but is caught in the radius of the blast, killing both Brock and the symbiote. The two that made up Venom appear to be dead, disintegrated from the face of the earth by the explosion. While wearing the symbiote, Venom can replicate Spider-Man's webbing and make shields with the organism's goopy body. Venom largely makes monster sounds when Eddie's face is covered up. Venom is also immune to Peter's spider sense, a trait lifted from the comics. Venom's appearance, just like the reception of the film, was mixed. People praised the special effects of the character, but there was criticism of Grace's portrayal of Eddie Brock, in addition to the length of screen time Venom had in the film. Spider-Man would continue on in film with The Amazing Spider-Man in 2012, but it would be a while for Venom to find their footing for their own movie.
My God, Eddie.
Ooh, my spider sense is tingling. If you know what I'm talking about.
Sony and other producers still had interest in making a movie centered on the character of Venom. Topher Grace was intended to spin off into his own movie, despite his character's death at the end of Spider-Man 3. Many screenwriters collaborated with Sony and Marvel on a concept and script treatment, but none of these left pre-production. Sony was skeptical if Topher Grace could carry a film as Venom, while some screenwriters disagreed. Concepts included a more dark and interesting tone for the character, having the character be a villain instead of an anti-hero becoming a hero, and having the symbiote jump from host to host. Spider-Man co-creator Stan Lee was considered in having a role larger than anything he had done at that point. Spider-Man 4 was in production at the same time as the first version of the Venom spin-off, and both were ultimately cancelled in favor of a new reboot series with a new actor playing Spider-Man. It is not known if any of these scripts were intended to tie into the main Spider-Man series or Spider-Man 4.
So we'll let him be for now.
You should leave him alone!
Sony still wanted to have their own Venom movie after the release of The Amazing Spider-Man. The idea was to capitalize on the shared universe concept of film franchising and have films about Marvel characters that Sony had the rights to, in addition to films about Spider-Man. Filmmakers and producers who worked on both The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 would contribute to the production of this Venom film, tentatively titled Venom Carnage.
Bring it on, Grandpa!
Sony would rethink their plans for the shared universe after The Amazing Spider-Man 2 underperformed at the box office, especially when comparing it to the success of The Amazing Spider-Man in 2012. Sony and Marvel announced their partnership between them to make Spider-Man films that took place in Marvel's own cinematic universe. Sony wanted to continue to make films based off of other Spider-Man characters, but canceled a planned Sinister Six movie and this version of a Venom film. What we largely know about this film is that it would have been an Eddie Brock story and would have included the character of Carnage in some way, judging from the title. With Spider-Man in the hands of Marvel and Disney, Sony reevaluated their game plan with the Marvel properties that they had the film rights to. After the success of Spider-Man Homecoming, Sony announced that its first in its Spider-Man shared universe would be the long-awaited Venom movie.
What the hell are you? We are Venom.
While its relationship to Marvel's films is currently up in the air, we will have to see if Venom delivers the anti-hero people always wanted later this week.
arms, and your legs, and you will eat your face right away. You will be this honest, legless, faceless thing, won't you? Rolling down the street like a turd in the wind.